What's up, YouTube? Erod212 here with another video. So it's that time again. Time for the back nine. And today we're going to look at the most important modern day comics. That's a real good topic. I think there should be some debate to this. And guys, everybody's going to have their picks. But big shout out to Ben from CBSI for giving me the opportunity to put this video out. I really like this content here. And big shout out to Phil from Vintage Comics Toys and Vintage Comics and Toys. Check him out at any con you're going to. He's out in the LA area, and appreciate you just setting up this. This is a real good topic. I enjoyed this. I was looking at this before, and I was like, wow. I really want to get into this. So let's just take a look at what Phil has to say about this. All right. So he goes, with more and more collectors and investors jumping into modern age comics, we thought it would be cool to look at what inspired the many great new comics to this date. This week, we are doing the most important comics in modern age. Much kudos to Jack Kornblatt for this topic. As always, feel free to drop your suggestions for most important age comics. Please check out the YouTube video link at the bottom of the article to see Erod's take on this. So, yeah, I mean, kudos to Jack. Jack always has some great information. Like I said, this is going to be interesting. Some of them you're going to kind of know, but some of them you're going to be like, wow. There was one or two here that caught me off guard, and I was like, wow, you know what? That's real interesting. I like that. And stay to the end because I'll show you my pick. I had two, but one of them had been selected already. One is my favorite of all time, but next one is just as important in my opinion. So let's take a look at the first one here. Youngblood #1, first Image comic published. The forming of Image Comics could actually be considered for many in comics now, that was a big turning point in their lives. Youngblood, I remember when Image Comics came out and the hype. And if you sit there and watch some of these documentaries, you're going to see what it meant for those young artists who are all 50-plus-year-old guys now. But back then, they were young 20-something bucks, just band together, say, we're not doing it the old school way. We're not going to allow you to control everything. We want to have some input in the creation, in the producing, and all aspects of it, and we want a bigger take. And they were able to get some of the big guns. You know, Liefeld and McFarlane were big, but Jim Lee was the crown on top of that crew. You know, and look what they've all become. I mean, they're say what you say about Liefeld, but Silvestri and especially McFarlane and Lee are the elite of the elite in the industry as far as, like, you know, just being those beloved guys. I go to a con and Tom McFarlane's there and the lines don't end. Same thing for Jim Lee. Silvestri is another guy who has a big fan following, although he didn't do as much as they do. He's actually doing a show in Philly next week that I'm going to be stopping in because I want to get a couple of books signed by him. So, you know, that's what I mean about that. And let's take a look at the next book here, right? And Jack's going to go with X-Force #116. First comic without the CCA in 30 years. This was the first comic to be published without the approval of the Comics Code Authority by Marvel in over 30 years. This is largely seen as the event that killed the CCA, which massively censored the comic book industry for nearly 50 years. Big win for free speech and good storytelling. First appearance of the Ecstatic team, essentially Marvel's version of The Boys. Really great work by Mike and Laura Aldred. And this is one of those books I'm talking about that I did not know that this was the book that happened in. And for all of us, we kind of know, you know, there was a big era in the 40s into the 50s where you had a lot of horror genre and, dark books and stuff like that, kind of like horror books or of that stuff, that series. And they showed head decapitations, which is that one famous cover, but also some bondage covers and some other stuff. And people back then, a little more uptight, I guess, evangelistic and everything else, banded together, creating a format in which comic books could only be written and approved if you covered this format. It changed the way DC wrote Batman. It changed the way DC wrote Superman. They went from fighting real villains to fighting nothing and garbage. Those books, you just look at the covers and the story arcs are just terrible for a while. So kudos on this. As time went on, you had the drug issue for Marvel and Amazing Spider-Man, but you also had What I love is when Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil took on the drug issues with Speedy in Green Lantern and Green Arrow. That to me just great writing and great art right there. Some of the most iconic stuff. That's why DC's so underrated with some of the books. And so now we're gonna go with Van Denby, who picks a classic, and I totally agree. And it's Watchmen #1. It's the first dark adult comic. In my opinion, Watchmen would make any top 10 important list. First comic that made adults take comic story taking seriously. I remember the first time I read Watchmen, and I was late to the game in reading Watchmen. I didn't read it when it first came out, but I read a compendium on it, and I was enthralled by it. Just if you have not read that, that's storytelling to its best. It's kind of like what you got later on in years. You just got better and better stories, and that evolves into people like Scott Snyder nowadays, and all of your other big writers that are writing great story. Jason Aaron and these guys who are writing great stories now. You're just getting fantastic storytelling, and with the ability to do it in the format that they want to. So good stuff right there. I think Watchmen's such a undervalued book, actually. It got hot when the series came out, hot when the movie came out, but that book deserves its due. And now Chris Nelms is going to go with Marvel Point 1, #1. And this is the new Marvel storytelling. Marvel started doing these in 2011 as a way to preview upcoming stories while also being a standalone story. In the first one, we got first Sam Alexander, but more than that, Marvel shows us how they will start rebooting and introducing new characters. From the very first issue, see Marvel begin to brave in their storytelling and artistic attempts, but they also begin to see their properties as potential MCU projects. And those of us who been collecting for a while will tell you, for a long time, I would say 5-7 years, those books were throwaways. Marvel Point 1, all new now, Marvel Point 1, which is the first Kamala Khan, that was a $10 book, a $5 and $10 book. You can find that anywhere. Find that book for $5 now. Find that book for $100 now. It's just not happening. And that's Sam Alexander. That's the next one, especially with the news of Nova coming along. It's already starting to peak and hit a $40 to $50 range, more in that $50 range. Anytime there's a hint of that, man, watch out for that book, because that book's going to take off. It's a thicker stock. It's a thicker book. They all are, because they have so many stories in it. So the bindery on it has a tendency to tear, not pressed properly. Also, you can cause staples to indent and have issues with that book. So not easy book to get in a 9.8 every day. Got to know what you're doing with that book. And now Topher goes with Superman #75, The Death of Superman. No one ever thought that they would ever kill Superman, but they did. Not only was this an event for comic enthusiasts, but this made headliner news on some media outlets. Then we had to guess how Superman was coming back. Platinum retail edition variants still go for a couple of $100. I remember this on the news. You know what's funny about this? This is the book that I always equate when the industry kind of went bust, because regular people, not comic book readers, but regular people were investing in that book, not knowing that there were millions of copies that were going to be made, thinking that that was going to bankroll them, that was going to be the big book of the future. Superman died. Can't get any bigger than that iconic Superman from the 40s passing away. Guess what? DC brought him back, and those books, for the most part, like you said, the Platinum Edition, but regular, dime a dozen, literally, because there were so many of those made, and that's how I always remember that book. And now we're going to go with Peter Renner again, and he goes with X-Men #1, the highest selling single comic issue of all time. While Silver Surfer got me to dip my toes into comics from being a card collector as a kid, it was this comic that not only sealed the deal and made me a Jim Lee fan for life, but also a comic collector for life. I recall needing every cover for this book, and that compulsion remains today in one form or another. While this may feel like a simple personal pick, and not having the gravitas of an Action 1, Tech 27, AF-15, or even an X-Men 1 from 1963, this is still a very important book. This was the biggest comic book of all time, and I don't even think there will ever be a comic that comes close to that. Over 8 million copies sold. This cemented comics as part of the pop culture landscape and was no longer a niche market only for nerds and geeks. Us nerds and geeks still run this thing, but the success of these books from the 90s made comics more acceptable among the normies. And that's well written by Peter Renner. I so remember buying every single cover for that book. And actually, the original art, I think Jim Lee just sold the original art for all of those covers. But there was nothing better than Jim Lee art in that era. Oh my God. I mean, just to this day. And I mean, if you've seen my past videos, you'll realize I won one of those books in a 9.8. Probably a $100 book now in a 9.8 at its best, because there are so many copies of it. But just amazing. I as much as I like that Wolverine, I love the cover with Magneto on it too. I think that's a great piece of art. Something nice to have in someone's collection if they could. And now Terry Harkness goes with Spawn, #1. Spawn is the longest running indie comic, and what used to be considered a cult following is now a mainstream title. I'm looking forward to where keys are when we get issue 500. And you know what? Especially those 150 to like 250 issues where there was a short print run because Spawn wasn't in the rage. As soon as it started getting closer to 300, the hype got really big, and McFarlane was going out and doing shows, and he was actually set up at New York Comic Con. He had an exclusive at San Diego. He had a New York exclusive, which was bananas. That day, I remember standing online and being able to get the silver, and instead of controlling it, because they were a limited amount, they let you grab as many as you wanted. The gold you could only get, I think it was like 4 per the first day, but deals got to them real quick. And Friday, it was the same bedlam. Saturday, there were none. And then Sunday, McFarlane held back gold. And the first 250 people, I think it was, that got on his line and purchased the figure were able to get one of the gold Spawn 300s. And that's kudos to Todd McFarlane for realizing that his fans were getting built by guys that were being shady and just hoarding it all to reflip, and taking care of the real fans who got there early. So you couldn't get on that line with a vendor badge. You couldn't get on there with a press badge. Had to have just an actual attendee's badge. So just a good memory about McFarlane with that stuff. It was pretty cool. But yeah, Spawn 300 was huge. Imagine what's going to happen with Spawn 500 heads. All right, and now we're going to see that Mighty Mel V goes with probably my favorite pick. This is my pick. And it's Ultimate Fallout 4. I don't like when they race swap characters, but this book can't be denied on the impact it has with a younger generation. Agree to disagree on some things, and that book right there, I had no problem with switching out. It gave Spider-Man a new perspective in a different direction. Miles Morales, to me, is the biggest modern-day comic character created, because he hasn't hit his ceiling yet. If you see Whatnot the other day, there was a sale of Ultimate Fallout 4, the 1 in 25 Djurjevic variant. It went for over $30,000. I believe that is the modern book to get. That 1 in 25 Djurjevic is the white whale of all of them right there. But even the Ultimate Fallout 4, they were poly bags. They had bad subcrease going on the back. You couldn't see the book well to know if you were picking out a good book or not. How many of those I've popped out for customers and corner dings and everything else, especially after they were sitting in bins for a while. Because remember, Miles doesn't take off initially. There's backlash to Miles. And people are screaming, it's not Peter Parker. But you didn't let the story develop. You have to be able to change with times, not only culturally, but with everything that goes on in society, because it's just not the way it was in the 1960s. So if you want comics to resonate to the youth of the future and keep this hobby going strong, we're going to have to get characters that are just white characters. And there's no disrespect. I'm not going into a race issue, but you're going to need Latino characters. You're going to need a Kamala Khan who's out there and represents, an Asian character. Just need all of those characters. Sam Alexander's half Mexican. You have biracial children. Same thing with Miles. Miles is half Puerto Rican and half black. So biracial. To me, that's important. That was great. And kudos to Marvel for doing that. Kudos to Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli and those guys for putting, to me, what is a groundbreaking book. Now, let me get off that soapbox here, but that, to me, that's a special book. I love that book. And now here goes another one. Like I said, it's an amazing book. And my man Phil goes with Captain Marvel 17, second print, the start of a later print-heavy investing. This second print key book started it all and sparked a lot of debate on whether reprints can be annotated as a key book. Shorter print runs were also a point being used to argue that these could be worth more than first prints. What helped this book more than anything also, it had first cover appearance of Kamala Khan. It took some time for other keys to pop up. All New Marvel .1, second print variant, has since pulled away as the most expensive of all of her keys. But yeah, that's what I was saying before. It takes some of these books some time. So like now when everybody's running after that Black Panther 3, just because somebody screams that it's going to be the next Ultimate Fallout 4, read your books. I say it all the time. Read your books. Is a story something that's going to carry? How did they develop that character? I mean, other thing that could happen though is that character could be created and goes in one direction for a few years, and it doesn't get, doesn't go the direction that people are enjoying, and then you get somebody along that comes along, likes that character, puts their own spin, a la what Joe Kelly did with Deadpool. You read Deadpool before under the Rob Liefeld era. It's not the Deadpool that we all know and love. That was Joe Kelly. And kudos to Joe Kelly, because I think that is an important book in this era. It's not the book I picked just because of that book, because it was created by Liefeld, and that's not the character we know, but it is definitely an important character. And here's another one that I mean, really watch this though, but Walking Dead #1. So Phil talks about Walking Dead #1, first modern age grail to hit $2,000. Before there was an Ultimate Fallout 4, there was Walking Dead #1, which was hailed as the modern age champion of keys. When this book hit over $2,000 in the CGC 9.8, it was revolutionary for the comic industry. I'm sure there were variants that hit over $2,000, but this was a regular cover that hit the newsstands. Since then, every year, speculators wonder what could be the next Walking Dead #1 to come out of the woods. Walking Dead #1, being a low print run, helped its value. Easily, it was a cult favorite before season 1 of AMC made it a cultural phenomenon for the horror genre across many casual TV viewers. I can recall, like, so many people at either the workplace or anywhere else you went, everybody Sunday had to go home and watch The Walking Dead. It was deep. You would go to horror shows and all the cast of The Walking Dead would be there signing autographs. When Negan came along, one of the best villains of all time. Everybody loved, Carl in the comic books, and just you're watching everything that was happening. And Kirkman just kept surprising you. And what made that book special is, Kirkman comes from Marvel. He does Marvel Zombies, goes over to Image, and he pitches this book, but he knows they don't want it the way he wants to do it, so he pitches it in a different way. They really don't pay no mind to him. Let him put it out. He figures he's going to get a couple of issues out of it, and it'll go away. It's a black and white book, and it becomes, boom, great storytelling. It becomes the book to get. For 100+ issues, people bought runs of The Walking Dead. It's dipped now, but Walking Dead 1 is still a great book, and one of the best modern books in my opinion. Also, I love that. And now that's the pick from the staff, but let me show you my pick, and you guys tell me what you guys think of this pick, all right? Because I really like this pick a lot, and I think it's an important book, and that's going to be Batman Adventures #12. It's the first appearance of Harley Quinn. I can't think of a female character that has been beloved by pop culture like Harley Quinn. This is a character that is cosplayed by women and girls of all ages, and her portrayal by Margot Robbie has only helped maintain the cult status this character has. Her connection to the Joker catapulted her to go from a kid's book into mainstream comics and her own title. I think that's about as much as you can say. Harley is the first female villain kind of book that just took off. I mean, it made DC a ton of money. The merch that sells for Harley Quinn, be it costumes, makeup, bow ties, t-shirts, pajamas, whatever, book bags. So it's amazing. And it was a kid's book. And to take that character from a kid's book and it became so popular that book crosses over into DC, and they realize that they have something there and create that character into a mainstream regular character that now has 3 movies out. It's amazing. But you know what? That's it for the back 9. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Check out the rest of the videos here. I've got some really good content on a couple of videos I just released. And also make sure that you're heading over, if you're not doing anything, to 3 Men in the Basement's comic swap. It's coming up in May. It's going to be a banger. I'm going to be there for the first time. I know there's quite a few people from the comic community that are going to be coming and hanging out. If you guys are available, head on up. Have a good time. And until my next video,